Before our speakers begin, I'd like to note a few logistics. All attendees are currently in listen-only mode. Following our speakers' remarks, we'll open the webinar up to questions. Throughout the presentations, please type your question into the chat box, which we'll work to address during the Q&A period. Finally, this webinar is being recorded. We'll send a link to registrants after the webinar. I'm going to pass it over to Annie.
Hi, everyone. My name is Annie Gilio. I'm ACEEE's Senior Manager for State Policy. Thank you so much for joining us today. Before we begin, I wanted to introduce our panelists. So in addition to myself, we're joined by three great panelists. Julian Boggs is Policy Director for the Keystone Energy Efficiency Alliance, a nonprofit dedicated to promoting energy efficiency and renewable energy industries in Pennsylvania. KEIA has over 50 business members. As Policy Director, Julian is responsible for developing and advancing KEIA's policy agenda at the state legislature. We'll hear a bit from him about legislation to expand efficiency in the state, and he'll also be on the line to answer questions after the presentations. Randy Groff is Director of Facilities and Energy at Four Seasons Produce, a full-service wholesale produce distributor supplying fresh produce to buyers across the Mid-Atlantic and Northeast. Randy is responsible for providing leadership, general management, technical direction, and supervision for a comprehensive facilities management program and oversees the food safety program and cafe operations. That's a lot. In his role, Randy has helped Four Seasons Produce implement many energy efficiency projects that leverage Act 129 incentives. Finally, Thomas Flaherty is Director of Development and Marketing at the Energy Coordinating Agency. ACEEE was founded in 1984 to combat energy poverty in Philadelphia and connects communities with energy assistance services. In 2010, ACEEE opened the Knight Green Jobs Training Center to prepare unemployed and underemployed young people, returning citizens, veterans, and older workers looking to retool their skills to enter the growing clean energy workforce. In his role, Thomas serves in a variety of capacities, including strategic planning, policy development, marketing, communications, administration, and information technology resources. So with that, I wanted to start first by talking about some recent ACEEE research called Lifting the Cap, Estimating the Economic Impacts of Energy Efficiency Investments in Pennsylvania. This is a piece of research that I led along with my colleague Jim Barrett, who's ACEEE's visiting fellow and economist. So I'd like to talk a little bit about where Pennsylvania is today in terms of energy efficiency, where it could go in the future, and then what the economic impacts would be and what we can learn about ramping up programs. So to start, I wanted to kind of lay the groundwork of where Pennsylvania is today. On this chart, you'll see Pennsylvania as that blue line that shows electricity savings statewide from 2006 through 2016. And you can see it follows about the national median. Pennsylvania does have an energy efficiency resource standard in place, and that's led to this ramp up in programs. But obviously, there is still a lot of room for improvement. That gray line is the statewide high savings that we're seeing each year as tracked in our state energy efficiency scorecard. I mentioned that Pennsylvania has an energy efficiency resource standard in place. Currently, there are actually 27 states with energy efficiency resource targets. New Jersey recently passed targets of their own, so we'll have to add them to this map. That said, Pennsylvania's targets are not the most ambitious. You can see that other states in the Northeast, along with Arizona, have higher energy savings goals. And so there is room to ramp up energy savings in Pennsylvania. Just to drive that home a little more, here we are looking at the region. And you can see that energy savings targets in most other states in the region are higher than in Pennsylvania. The reason for that is that Pennsylvania's energy savings goals are pretty much dictated by a cost cap on energy savings that says that utilities need to invest up to 2% of 2006 revenues in energy savings. And they cannot invest more than that. We wanted to see what would happen if you took that cost cap away and ramped up savings over time. Here we're showing the pathway of energy savings that we analyzed in our white paper. You can see the blue line is the base case, which is assuming that energy savings remain constant over time at about 0.8%, which is what utilities have experienced in the past and what goals have been set to reflect. If you remove that cost cap, though, and slowly ramp up energy savings over time, what would the economic impacts be? In our study, we used a ramp up to 1.2%, as you can see in that orange line, and we did this for a couple of reasons. One is that it is reflective of a scenario analyzed by Synapse Energy Economics in a 2018 study. And a second reason is that the statewide evaluator for Pennsylvania found base achievable incremental savings to be 1.2% in 2025 for Pennsylvania. This represents savings based on historical incentive levels and adoption rates, but it doesn't account for improvements in program design or higher levels of incentives. The statewide evaluator found maximum achievable savings to be about 50% higher, 1.8%. So all that to say is that what we are analyzing here is a really conservative scenario, but nonetheless a pretty big bump up for energy savings in Pennsylvania. All right, now we're getting to the good stuff. What would the economic impacts be?
Can you pause to check the audio?
Sure, let's take a pause. I'm hearing that there might be some issues with the audio. Can folks let me know if they can hear me?
Yeah, just put it in the chat box, and if you're having problems with the audio, and I've also added the call-in information if you'd rather join by phone for audio.
All right, it sounds like others can hear us. So I'm going to go ahead and continue. If you can't hear me, please do join by phone, and hopefully that will improve the sound. Great. So good timing to get started again because we're just jumping into the meaty stuff. For our analysis, we used a model called DEEPER, which stands for the Dynamic Energy Efficiency Policy Evaluation Routine. This is ACEEE's in-house input-output model that tracks energy savings and the impacts across 15 economic sectors. Basically what DEEPER does is it tracks changes in demands for goods and services across Pennsylvania's economy. It determines how much output from each economic sector is required to meet that demand, and then determines how much labor is required to produce that output and how much state gross domestic product is associated with that change in demand. One thing I want to note is that what we're finding with DEEPER, the output isn't net jobs, so not gross jobs, but rather we're accounting for both jobs created and jobs lost. So the impacts I'm about to show you are net impacts. What we found in our study is that ramping up energy savings to 1.2% in Pennsylvania would create 30,000 jobs. And these are long-term impacts. So you'll see with the area that I've circled here in green, that the most jobs are created during the implementation period. I should note here that we're looking only at ramping up things over a 5-year period, which is consistent with past planning processes in Pennsylvania. So we're not assuming that energy savings programs continue past 2025, but I think that it is fair to say it's very likely that they would. So again, we're looking at a conservative scenario here. Should energy efficiency programs continue past 2025, you would see these trend lines continue to go up. The jobs early on here are associated with implementation. So these are contractors and folks directly employed by energy efficiency program implementers to go into homes and businesses and install energy efficiency measures. Jobs continue out through 2050, however, and these are jobs that are created due to the increased energy savings associated with the Act 129 energy efficiency programs. I I also wanted to just drive that home a little more and point out that job creation mirrors energy savings. So here what you're seeing are energy savings associated with the programs implemented from 2021 through 2025. You'll see that savings ramp up over this period, but because measures installed tend to deliver energy savings for many years into the future, we're seeing energy savings continue out through 2025. For our study, we expected the average useful life of residential efficiency measures to be just over 6 years, and that of commercial and industrial measures to be about 13 years. And that's consistent with what Synapse used in their study of the ramp up in programs as well. So I hinted at this a little bit, and really the focus of our webinar today is to talk about what do those jobs look like. We divide the jobs that come out of deeper into 2 categories. One are jobs created from industries that implement energy efficiency measures. Those are construction and related industries, and also the supply chains that are associated with that. The other kinds of jobs that are created are service sector jobs, including retail industries. Consumers and businesses spend a significant share of their disposable income on services of various types. These services would see a large increase in demand and job creation. These jobs would be longer term, as you saw in a past slide, and as consumers spend their energy bill savings year after year. But they're also harder to identify as they're spread over a larger portion of the economy and a longer period of time. So I wanted to link you to the white paper here. Please do read more about it by clicking the link. It's online and it's a short, easy read. And with that, I wanted to turn it over to Julian to talk a little bit more about the policy context in Pennsylvania and give background on Act 129 and what we can expect in the future. Julian?
Thanks so much, Annie. So Act 129 is Pennsylvania's energy efficiency resource standard. So as Annie mentioned in her slide earlier, 27 states have energy efficiency resource standards. It's a requirement on utilities that they help their customers save energy. Many efficiency resource standards include a specific target in the legislation. Ours asks the PUC to set targets on over a set period of time, and in the past they've set targets on over 3 to 5 year phases. That's one of the reasons, as Annie said, that this study looked at a 5-year time period. Those targets are based on a couple of factors. So the first is a potential study undertaken by the PUC through their statewide evaluator, and the second is fitting that potential study into a cost effectiveness test to the total resource cost test to ensure that energy efficiency investments are cost effective, and fitting those targets under the cost cap that Annie referred to, that is 2% of 2006 utility revenues. A bit arbitrary. It's around $250 million a year across the entire state, which sounds like a big number, but Pennsylvania is a huge state. We spend $14 billion on electricity. And the current phase ends May 2021. So while that is a couple years away, the PUC has already begun the process of baseline studies to prepare for setting new targets and utilities filing plans so that we're ready to run concurrent plans with a new phase after this phase ends with minimal interruption. That means that if we're looking at potential legislative changes to Act 129, this calendar year is really the best time to do that in order to avoid disruptions in program implementation. So that brings us to current legislation. In January of this year, a group of bipartisan senators, and now we're up to 16 co-sponsors, introduced Senate Bill 232, which we've called the Energy Efficiency Investment Act. This has 3 really important components. The first and most significant, especially in the context of this analysis, is it removes the cost cap on energy efficiency and allows the cost effectiveness test to be the determinant of how much utilities should invest, along with the potential study, rather than an arbitrary limit based on 2006 numbers. So it removes that cap entirely, basing and allows data to be able, current data to be able to set budgets. The second piece is it reforms the total resource cost test and allows additional benefits to be included when calculating whether or not energy efficiency investments are cost effective. Benefits like other utility benefits, gas and water, non-energy benefits, health benefits. A lot of measures, whole home measures, buildings envelope, et cetera, can be some of the most effective and important investments to make, but don't meet rigid cost effectiveness tests over a short period of time, and therefore don't get emphasized in a lot of current utility plans. So reforming the cost effectiveness test, especially in the context of expanding overall investment, should allow new types of utility programs, encouraging whole home investments and energy efficiency improvements. Those are the main two reforms that Senate Bill 232 makes. It also does provide incentives for utilities concurrent with Act 58, which is already in law, that encourages utilities to exceed their targets, not just avoid the penalty by hitting the minimum. So with those three things together are really the three-legged stool that we think makes Senate Bill 232 a really powerful tool for meeting the promise of energy efficiency, especially after 2021 in the new phase of Act 129, and really capitalizing on these benefits that we're outlining here and the specific real-world impacts that Randy and Thomas will talk about next.
Thanks, Julian. That tees it up perfectly for me to turn it over to Randy Groff. Randy, four-season produce successful stream of energy efficiency projects and the resulting economic impacts for the company. So, Randy, take it away.
Thanks, Annie. If you want to go on to the next slide there, just to give you a little background on Four Seasons, in case you're not familiar with Four Seasons Produce. We're a fruit and vegetable distribution center, conventional, organic, ethnic produce. We ship in a 500-mile radius here in the Northeast. We have two facilities here in Ephrata, totaling about 325,000 square feet. We have backup generators here at the main facility that backs up the whole facility plus the refrigeration. And then we employ about 950 associates right now. So a couple of years ago, we introduced this energy policy, and you can see the statement there of what we're charging our organization to do. And there's a couple of bullet points, that we focus on. One is reducing our energy intensity by 5% each year, 5% from the previous year. And then we want to implement at least 3 or 4 energy efficiency ideas each year. And then, of course, track our energy use. We do have sub-metering throughout the facility. We can track our electrical, natural gas, including water as well. And then pursue methods to have our energy use more visible to our associates. So we really focus a lot on getting our associates awareness up and use our associates as key members of the team to be able to come up with ideas and implement these energy efficiency projects. So we started this back in 2006. We moved in this new facility here at the main location in 2004. And in 2006, we started working on energy efficiency for business case. It was an idea that we had, that we knew this facility, being a refrigerated facility, was using a lot of energy, and a lot more energy than what we were expecting. So we started going after these retrofits right off within 2 years. As you can see, in 2007, we were here in the building a little less than 3 years, and we were taking out the 400-watt metal halide lights that didn't make sense to be installed in a refrigerated facility, and changing them to a 6-lamp T8. So you can see some other projects there. Power quality equipment we installed. We replaced some dock shelters, and then did a HVAC retrofit. All these were done without rebates, you know, up until 2009. So 2010, the rebates started to come into play, and you can see the list of rebates there and the projects that we've done. A lot of it is lighting retrofits. Induction lights were coming into play around 2011. LEDs were in the marketplace, but it was kind of early. So we waited until about 2013 and replaced our metal halides. We had some floodlights that were 1,000-watt metal halides. We changed them to a 300-watt LED. You can see the savings there, also the rebate. Dock canopy lights, that's around our docks. Small project, but still it was a home run for us. Exterior wall packs, we went after them in 2013, and you can see the savings there. So continuing on, lighting retrofit, we found a high bay LED in 2013 that we could switch our 6-lamp T8s that we had in, change that all to LED. That was a great project. The warehouse associates and employees loved the LED lighting for operations. Evaporator motor upgrade, you can see it. We changed all the evaporators. There was probably close to 800 evaporator motors that we changed on this project. This was probably one of the biggest savings projects that we've had, the lowest ROI, and you can see, you know, we got a $63,000 rebate from PP&L, which helps with that ROI. And then you can see some other lighting retrofits. We changed some VFDs on our cooling towers, changed some other small LEDs around the office. So back in 2004, this facility was built with no LEDs. We had some fluorescents around in the office areas, but to date, as of last fall, we are completely changed over now to LED and every light in the building inside and out, which is great. So moving on to the next slide, we last project we did just last fall, we put a 1.3 megawatt solar array up on our roof. We chose to place this over the refrigerated areas and also the dock, only because that was re-roofed recently with a small addition that we put on. So you can see the savings there. We've got a $92,000 rebate from Act 129. We started the project and didn't even realize that we could go after an Act 129 rebate. And I was talking with a PP&L associate at a conference, and she had just mentioned to me that, hey, if you're putting solar on, you can go after a 129 rebate, and it just shocked us that we were able to do that. So that project actually is turning out to be a 2.2-year payback with that Act 129 rebate. We also got a grant from the state, but that's a really a great case study for solar. And then down at the bottom, you can see the total PP&L Act 129 rebate money was received since 2010 is right now at $241,886. So that's all money that you know is some of that, of course, is being taken away from us on our invoice, or our bill every month. And when this whole program started, I had told my direct report that I'm going to capture every penny that is coming off our invoice for Act 129. And we've been successfully been able to do that since 2010. And as you can see, that number is a lot higher than what was taken off. So, so a little bit more about our journey with energy efficiency and sustainability. You can see it since 2004, we've reduced our electric usage by 17%, electric costs by 26%. We do participate in demand response, and you can see the revenue generated from that. We were awarded a Green Power Award in 2009, Green Plus certified in 2013. I forget the year for the Energy Star, but we were recognized as the first refrigerated warehouse in the country to be awarded Energy Star. And then we're featured in DC Velocity and high performing buildings. We're the first facility to receive the 50,001 Ready designation from the U.S. Department of Energy. And then, of course, we're recognized by PP&L as a gold level energy efficiency business. So in summary, we use a lot of our internal maintenance associates for these projects. We do have hired outside contractors for some of the larger ones. But as far as future projects, we're looking at doing some possibly more ECM motor retrofits. We find that as being a real big energy savings. And then we're also looking into a waste to energy project in the future. So in closing, I'd like to say that our average ROI for the energy efficiency projects as a whole has been a little over 3 years. And we could never have achieved that without having the Act 129 rebate money coming in place. So that's really helped us keep all these projects low with a low ROI. So.
Great. Thank you so much, Randy. I appreciate your presentation and all of the things that your company has been able to do. I'd like to now turn it over to Thomas Flaherty. Thomas will be discussing Energy Coordinating Agency's Clean Energy Workforce Development efforts. So Thomas, take it away.
All right, thank you. And wow, I'm going to buy some Four Seasons now that I know how cleanly that supply chain is running. That's incredible. So we're the Energy Coordinating Agency. We've been working for about 35 years now on energy needs. We got our start on really working on reducing terminations and ensuring access to energy. We have 72 employees now. We run 15 neighborhood energy centers around the city. And our mission today is to help people conserve energy and promote a sustainable and socially equitable energy future for all in the Philadelphia region, although that statement needs some updating now that we work in northern Delaware. Of course, in the city that we've come up in, there is incredible poverty and near poverty throughout the city, and we work out of the city's poorest zip code. The median income in the 19133 area is, I want to say, roughly 15,000 among all households. The challenges are incredible, but the issue of deferred maintenance and the issue of unemployment, the issues of poverty, these are issues where we can connect them through training the un and underemployed to work on the energy efficiency of buildings around Philadelphia. We connect to the community through our neighborhood energy centers that I mentioned we have 15 of. These institutions are neighborhood organizations, they're neighborhood advisory committees, they're community development corporations. They're rooted in understanding how things work block by block and connect folks who need help the most to state energy grants and to our weatherization services, as well as connecting community members with housing counseling, budget counseling, referring folks to our training center. These are full service locations, and each of these organizations is doing other great work that we don't fund. And that's enough background about us overall. Our Night Green Jobs Training Center is what you're all here to hear about. It's a 18,000 square foot facility, next slide, with several programs nationally accredited by the Interstate Renewable Energy Council. Our facility is LEED Gold certified with 6 or 7 classrooms, computer lab, walk-in construction modules. You see in the bottom right there a full set of residential heaters and water heaters, so that our trainees can get a sense of the breadth of residential systems. We have oil-fired systems, we have gas-fired systems. They are all hooked up to run so that instructors can induce errors in the machines and test students on diagnosing a running machine with errors. We also have now a full commercial HVAC training lab that I can talk more about later. This facility is training to standards including the Home Energy Professional Quality Control Inspector, the BPI Energy Auditor, Whole House Air Leakage and Control Installer, OSHA 40 HAZWOPER, you got the gist. And we're tending to train young folks and returning citizens. We certainly also train adults who are out of high school and are no longer returning citizens as well in some of our programs. We also take paying trainees gladly outside of our core grant and contract funded training. But this is the bread and butter of what we do. The green renovation and retrofit, solar PV installation, and the pathways in commercial HVAC through our partnership with Johnson Controls. Green renovation and retrofit is between home repair, energy efficiency, and dealing with hazardous materials. And that's the mix of skills it takes to work on residential properties throughout our area. If your only job is to weatherize, you need to know how to deal with knob and tube wiring when you run into it in an attic. We implement energy conservation programs, both federal energy efficiency and utility energy efficiency programs. And every day we're out in Philadelphia homes and we still run into knob and tube wiring in the attics. Doing rewires to get energy efficiency done is a necessity. Working around lead paint to get energy efficiency done is a necessity. And from the green renovation and retrofit course, students might focus on residential HVAC. They might focus on the installation of weatherization measures, or some of them take that OSHA 40 HAZWOPER certification and really go in the hazardous materials direction. That can be an energy efficiency job if they're doing site cleanup necessary for energy efficiency work, and it can be an energy efficiency job on the supply side when they're working in manufacturing roles. Certainly many energy efficient devices and materials require those sorts of work, those sorts of workers in the factories that produce them. The next program that I'll talk about is the JCI Pathways program. This is a 3-phase curriculum with 600 hours per phase, and making it through phase 1 That's enough. That's enough to get you to a solid $30,000 to $40,000 entry-level job. And simply implementing phase 1 in Virginia, and this wasn't us, this was another JCI partner in that area, but implementing the program for returning citizens in that area saw 58 out of 61 trainees out of prison working 3 years out from the program. And if you're familiar with national recidivism rates, that is an incredible figure. I want to say the national recidivism rate is close to 50%. And this program is focused, of course, on the fundamentals of commercial HVAC controls, along with understandings of electricity and core construction concepts necessary surrounding that knowledge. And this will prepare folks for jobs in building maintenance, jobs in commercial HVAC. They could go in other directions with facility controls and maintenance. There are many directions that people can go, but one of the most common directions, and what should be one of the most common directions for either sort of program, is directly into the organizations making this training possible. We at ACEEE like hiring our best graduates. Some of our best instructors have come through our programs. Some of our employees who go out and do weatherization have come through our programs. We have subcontractors who've come through our programs. And as the JCI program moves forward, it started just this past fall, they are certainly looking to hire some of those graduates as they begin to expand the number of projects they're working on doing HVAC upgrades for institutions around Philadelphia, such as the school district. So to talk some about graduate stories, I'm going to talk about Otis Boone and Roberto Torres Rodriguez. Otis Boone graduated from our EPA environmental remediation program back in December 2017. At the time, he was a homeless veteran with a wife and his son living in his car while he attended class. And it took some weeks of class for us to find out this was going on. We, of course, invited his wife and son to be inside the building and not waiting outside in a car. But we also engaged with a partner of ours, the Friends Rehabilitation Program, helped him move into an apartment, worked with him on getting VA benefits. And this was someone who really only needed that chance because as soon as he graduated, he wasn't looking for a job, he was looking to make jobs. He is now the owner of AAA Environmental Essential LLC. He's gone on to land, home renovation contracts, lead remediation contracts in Pennsylvania and Maryland. And since graduation, his company has hired over 8 ECA graduates, none with a starting wage lower than $15 an hour. A few more stories like that, and we would live in something of a transformed society. Roberto Torres Rodriguez came to the Green Renovation Retrofit program on parole in December of 2018. He stuck through the course despite the obstacles in his life around him, and showed extraordinary talent throughout the course and became one of those students that we saw and said, we're hiring you. Today he installs energy efficient water heaters and does green renovation construction repairs in our weatherization programming. A third story that I didn't put up there and was reminded of is someone who was trained well before my time here at ECA, Tracy Burton. She had a bit of a banking background before coming through our course, and studying weatherization let her bring her expertise with financing into an understanding of energy and energy auditing. And she is now the owner of a company called Tangent, delivering building science solutions for multifamily residential and small commercial projects. We hope to tell a lot more of these stories over the next decade. Thank you all very much for your time.
Thanks, Thomas. That was really inspiring. Lots of great stories, and it's a pleasure to hear about the work that ECA is doing. So with that, I think we'll turn to questions. As a reminder, you can type your questions in the chat box, and we actually have quite a lot coming through, so we'll do our best to get to as many as we can. So the first question is for Julian. Just going back to your discussion of SB 232, can you talk a little bit about whether utilities have been involved in the development of that piece of legislation, or what their perspectives might be?
Sure, I have to be extremely careful here, and I don't want to speak for any utilities. We have had discussions with utilities. I think that there is some interest in the Pennsylvania utilities are very different. So we have 4 investor-owned utilities who are regulated under Act 129. And First Energy is divided into 4 subsidiaries, but you've got the First Energy companies, Duquesne Light, PP&L, and PECO. They all approach regulatory and legislative issues from different perspectives, and they all work together with under their trade association with the Energy Association. So everybody might be a little bit different. There is certainly one policy in Senate Bill 232 that all of the utilities love, which is the removal of the minimum mandatory penalties for failure of compliance on Act 129. Currently, there's a penalty range from $5 to $20 million. Senate Bill 232 proposes that there is no minimum, that the PUC can exercise discretion whether or not to fine a utility at all if they've made a good faith effort, and brings the maximum down to $5 million. We think having a mandatory requirement is really important. And we do think that some accountability is important, but we certainly see the perspective that kind of the C-suite driven fear of not hitting the mandate leads to the safest possible types of programs, and doesn't really put utilities on the innovative experimental footing that they need to be in order to achieve deeper energy savings. I think that's the biggest one where I think that, it's clear that utilities support that piece of it. The other thing I will say is that I think that there's been general positive attitudes towards reforming the cost effectiveness test across a broad range of stakeholders. I think almost all stakeholders realizes that we're not measuring the benefits of energy efficiency correctly, especially when we leave things like gas and water savings on the table. Then the other thing I'll say is that, why aren't utilities gung-ho on Senate Bill 232 as much as they might be? And if you remove their minimum limit, then that does allow the cost cap, that does allow the utility commission to set a higher minimum standard. And if you're the regulated entity, you might not want the mandated target to come higher, which is a possibility if the cap is removed. So that's as much as I think I can speak to where the utilities might be on this.
Thanks, Julian. The next question is for Randy. And Randy, can you quantify or say a little bit more about how your energy cost savings have impacted the company overall? For example, can you talk about how C-suite executives view these programs, how invested they are in them? Can you say anything about job growth for your company?
Yeah, sure. Years ago, facilities maintenance departments were always looked at as an expense department, and my goal was to turn that around and actually make it a revenue department, which is kind of unheard of. Along with the Act 129 rebates, other incentives, demand response, recycling income, all this now has become a revenue stream within the facilities department, and that gets a lot of attention in our accounting. Our accountant and department, and also the C-suite. Like I said earlier, the first few projects were a little bit tough to sell, but once the Act 129 rebates started to kick in and the ROIs started to really come down, it was almost without question when I would take a project to our CEO for a PO. There was not much question about it. It was a great ROI. And we not only just present that in the beginning, but after the project's over, I take the results because we have meters in place and we have data that we can pull. I can show the C-suite, what the actual project did. And many times, if, not all of them, but I would say a majority of the projects have come under, over expected as far as the savings. So that helps sell the next project, of course. As far as internal jobs, I said earlier that most of our projects we do in-house. We have about 9 facilities maintenance associates working on all 3 shifts. So even though some of these projects would probably take a little bit longer for our maintenance associates to complete, I think it over the years has provided a lot of experience that our maintenance associates would probably never have gotten into if they wouldn't have done these projects for us. So I think expanding their knowledge, of course, keeping them busy, and just using them internally. We try to do that as much as possible. When a project's too big or if we need a certain deadline, then we'll reach out to a contractor. But I think our maintenance associates could say that they've gained a lot of experience over the years by doing these projects.
Thank you, Randy. I want to skip over to Thomas now. Thomas, we had a few questions about where funding for ACEEE comes from. And also as a follow-on to that, can you talk about how you coordinate with utilities to align your programs with their priorities, if at all?
Thomas,
okay, two-parter. Most of our funding is federal, and that is between our federal utility programming and our heater replacement work, heater repair and replacement work, I should say, as well as funding the neighborhood energy centers. The LIHEAP and CDBG funding LIHEAP's funding streams start with Health and Human Services. CDBG, of course, starts with HUD. That's the Low-Income Home Energy Assistance Program and the Community Development Block Grant. And of course, the Federal Weatherization Assistance Program starting from DOE. Our next biggest chunk of funding comes from the Low-Income Usage Reduction Program dollars through the utilities. Finally, our training programs are funded in principle by the local workforce development authority. Philadelphia works. Although there are other small foundation funders alongside that. The US EPA is also a funder of our workforce training. As for coordination with utilities on the, well, I mean, we of course coordinate with the utilities for the programs we're implementing for them in the low-income usage reduction area. In the workforce side of things, we do invite energy efficiency employers around the area to join employer roundtables from time to time, and I think we see more of implementation companies coming to those sorts of things, but to the degree that we can get them, we of course love having the utilities at the table to talk about energy efficiency jobs.
Thanks, Thomas. We also had a question for you about whether you have had any difficulties in finding job placements for the students you've trained, especially through the Returning Citizens program, whether background checks have been an issue, for example.
I can say that overall, the job placement rate for programs like Renovation Retrofit is 88%. Philadelphia is a ban the box area. Employers, I don't know that employers are allowed to ask about criminal background in interviews, but indeed it is the type of thing that can come up during background checks, and our placement folks certainly talk with graduates about what types of jobs they can go for based on where their background is. There are also a lot of great organizations in Philadelphia for expungement of minor offenses when it comes to seeking employment and moving on in society.
Thanks, Thomas. Randy, I have a couple of follow-up questions for you as well. One question is about whether you have thought about addressing building envelope at all, and another question asking about whether you've also targeted programs to achieve gas savings.
Yeah, so the building envelope, I think it was around 2010, we looked at our docks and we receive a lot of different size trucks at our docks. So the normal dock cushion was installed in 2004 when the facility was built. And we were actually, my direct report and I were at a facility in New Jersey looking at a solar project just to kind of do some investigating. And we were walking through their warehouse, and on their dock door, they had what they call a combo shelter. And the combo shelter is installed in place of the dock cushion so that it embraces any size truck that would back into the dock. So we immediately came back, we started investigating it, and within a few months we had these installed. And you know, we had straight trucks that were backing up to our doors that were leaving about a 2-foot opening, and our dock we keep at 40 degrees year round. So you can imagine over the summertime, you know, that 2 foot of space is a lot of cold air leaving the facility. So that was one of the projects we had done there. And then what was your second question? I'm sorry.
Whether you have targeted any programs to achieve gas savings, or whether your programs have been specifically electricity focused.
No, we also went after some gas savings. We installed some occupancy sensors in some of the larger spaces. We also did we changed the mainframe of our HVAC system to an upgraded platform. So we've seen some huge energy savings on the gas side with those two projects that we've done a couple years ago.
Great. Well, we are quickly reaching the top of the hour here, and I don't think we'll have time to get to all of our questions. So instead, I would like to thank our presenters for joining us today. All of their contact information is available in their presentation, so I will volunteer them if you'd like to reach out directly. We'll also be making this presentation available on our YouTube page in the next day or two, so you can find this recording there with all the contact information and information that the presenters have given you today. So Randy, Julian, and Thomas, thank you very much for joining us. We hope that this discussion will continue. Thank you.